What if every decision you've ever made based on your own wisdom, every problem you've tried to solve with your own intelligence, and every prayer you've prayed asking God to fix what you think is broken, has actually been keeping you from the very breakthrough you've been desperately seeking? I know this sounds almost impossible to believe, especially in a world that constantly tells you to trust yourself, believe in yourself, and rely on your own strength. But stay with me until the end of this Clear's Throat video, because what you're about to discover might completely transform not just how you pray, but how you experience God's presence in every single moment of your life. For most of your spiritual journey, you've probably been operating from a place of self-rust disguised as faith. You analyze your problems with your own understanding, devise strategies with your own intellect, and then ask God to bless your plans. You wake up each morning mentally calculating how to navigate your challenges, trusting your own assessment of what's right and wrong, what's possible and impossible. Even your prayers reveal this hidden pattern. You tell God what you need, explain to Him how He should fix it, and outline exactly what the solution should look like. Has this ever happened to you? You pray with absolute certainty about what needs to happen, convinced your understanding of the situation is accurate, only to have everything unfold in completely unexpected ways that initially feel like failure. Or perhaps you've spent years trusting your own judgment about a relationship, a career path, or a financial decision, filling journals with prayers, asking God to make your plan work, yet watching it crumble despite your best efforts. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world, and if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. Here's the uncomfortable truth that most spiritual teaching never addresses. The very act of trusting yourself, even in your prayers, creates a subtle but powerful barrier between you and divine wisdom. Every time you approach God with your own analysis of what's wrong and your own prescription for what needs to happen, you're unconsciously declaring, "My understanding is reliable, my assessment is accurate, my solution is correct." You're asking God to serve your perspective rather than surrendering to His. This creates a spiritual paradox that has kept millions trapped in cycles of unanswered prayers and frustrating disconnection. The more intensely you trust your own evaluation of your circumstances, the more you pray from that place of self-reliance, the further you drift from the peace and breakthrough you're seeking. You cry out for clarity while clutching tightly to your own interpretations. You beg for direction while insisting on traveling the path you've already chosen. You ask for transformation while trusting that you know what transformation should look like. What makes this even more challenging is that this pattern feels responsible, even virtuous. Taking charge of your life, being proactive, using the mind God gave you. These seem like positive qualities. And they can be, but only when they're surrendered to something infinitely greater than your limited human perspective. What you're about to discover is what truly changes when you stop trusting yourself completely and learn to trust God only, not as a consultant for your plans, but as the very source of your consciousness itself. The profound shift that happens when you stop trusting yourself reveals something most people never realize. Nothing is actually being withheld from you, not the healing you've been desperately seeking, not the financial breakthrough that seems just out of reach, not the wisdom to navigate your most difficult decisions, not the peace that eludes you despite every self-help strategy you've tried. This is the hidden truth that transforms everything. Divine abundance, guidance, and love aren't locked away in some cosmic vault waiting for you to finally pray the right prayer or prove yourself worthy enough to receive them. What's actually happening is far more beautiful and far more accessible than you've been led to believe. Right now, in this very moment, there's a perpetual stream of grace flowing directly toward you. It never stops. It never diminishes. It doesn't depend on your performance or your understanding. The problem isn't that God is ignoring your requests or testing your faith to see if you're strong enough. The problem is that your consciousness is tuned to the wrong frequency, and this is where trusting yourself instead of God creates the most devastating impact on your spiritual journey. Think about it like this. Imagine there's a radio station broadcasting music, the most extraordinary music, throughout the entire universe, playing continuously, without pause. This broadcast has been transmitting since before you were born and will continue long after you're gone. The music is always there, always available, always perfect. Now, here's the crucial question that changes everything. Is the issue whether the music exists? No. The music is constant. The real question is whether you're positioned to receive it. If this resonated with you, I'd love for you to subscribe and join this community, exploring what it means to stop trusting ourselves and trust God completely. Each video takes us deeper into living from divine intelligence rather than limited human thinking. When your radio is turned off or tuned to static, the broadcast doesn't stop. The music keeps playing. You're simply not aligned to hear it. This is exactly what happens in your spiritual life when you trust your own understanding instead of surrendering completely to divine intelligence. Your mind becomes cluttered with fear-based thinking, anxious calculations about how to solve your problems, desperate mental strategies to control outcomes. You're essentially tuning yourself to static, while the most beautiful guidance, the clearest solutions, the most profound revelations are broadcasting on a completely different frequency. Behind the scenes of your struggle, divine intelligence has been constantly transmitting opportunities, breakthroughs, and answers directly to your consciousness. The broadcast never weakens. But when you're operating from self-rust, analyzing everything through your limited human perspective, trying to figure out life with your own wisdom, you create interference. It's not that you need to make the broadcast stronger or convince God to turn up the volume. You need to stop generating the static that's blocking your reception. This transformation in how you approach your entire existence isn't about trying harder or thinking more positively. It's about recognizing that while you've been exhausting yourself, trying to be the solution, trying to be wise enough, strong enough, strategic enough, there's been a divine broadcast transmitting perfect wisdom that you've been too busy to receive. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because understanding what creates this interference and how to actually tune into divine frequency rather than human static is where the real transformation begins to unfold in ways you can actually experience in your daily decisions and circumstances. Write tuning in the comments if this is starting to resonate with something you've experienced in your own spiritual journey. The transformation that changes everything begins at a very specific moment, and it's probably not what you think. It doesn't start when you finally figure out the right words to pray or when you develop enough faith to believe harder. It starts the exact moment you stop generating more thoughts about what you need and how to get it. This is the fundamental mindset shift that most people never make because it feels completely counterintuitive to everything you've been taught about taking control of your life. Instead of adding more mental energy to your problems, more strategies to your challenges, more analysis to your circumstances, you do something that feels almost dangerous at first. You surrender those thoughts entirely. You release your grip on trying to orchestrate outcomes with your limited understanding. You allow God to actually be your mind. Not just influence it or guide it, but literally become the consciousness through which you perceive, decide, and act. This isn't about creating some new reality that didn't exist before or manifesting something through sheer force of positive thinking. You're simply removing the obstacles to what has always been flowing in your direction, clearing away the interference of self-rust so divine intelligence can operate through you without resistance. This journey from human thinking to divine intelligence reveals something most people never recognize about why their desperate prayers seem to go unanswered. Behind the scenes of your spiritual struggle, there's an energetic reality operating that your words alone cannot override. When you're stuck in asking mode, constantly petitioning and pleading, pouring out requests from a place of anxiety and fear, your entire being begins vibrating in a very specific frequency. It's the frequency of lack, the frequency of incompleteness. There's an underlying current running through every desperate prayer, every anxious thought about what you don't have, every fearful calculation about your future. That current whispers a message that becomes your energetic signature. I am incomplete. I am broken. I am separate from what I need. And here's the hidden truth about how this impacts your actual experience. This vibration of lack doesn't attract what you're asking for. It actually pushes it away. Not because God is punishing you or the universe is being cruel, but because of a fundamental principle that governs all of existence. The universe, reality, itself, responds not to the words you speak or even the intentions you hold. It responds to your energetic signature, to the frequency you're broadcasting through your consciousness. When you're vibrating at the frequency of I don't have, when your prayers come from a place of trusting your own assessment that you're lacking something essential, life mirrors that vibration back to you with more experiences that confirm your lack. It's not punishment, it's resonance. You're getting exactly what you're broadcasting, which is why trusting yourself to identify what's wrong and what's missing actually perpetuates the very conditions you're trying to escape. This is where the transformation becomes tangible in ways you can actually observe in your daily life. The moment you stop trusting your own evaluation of your circumstances and surrender completely to God's perspective, your energetic signature shifts from lack to fullness, from separation to union, from desperate asking to peaceful receiving. Now I want to go even deeper into this topic because recognizing this pattern intellectually is one thing, but understanding how to actually make this shift in your moment experience, especially when facing real challenges that your mind insists require immediate strategic intervention, is where the practical transformation unfolds. Right, I'm releasing lack in the comments. If you're recognizing this vibration in your own prayer life, when you make this shift from trusting yourself to trusting God completely, something profound happens at the core of your being. You begin resonating with an entirely different energy. And this isn't just spiritual theory. It creates real observable changes in how you experience life. Instead of broadcasting that frequency of lack and incompleteness, you start embodying fullness. There's a quiet confidence that settles into your consciousness. And this is crucial to understand, because it's not the ego-driven confidence that comes from believing in your own abilities or trusting your own wisdom. This is something far deeper and far more stable. It's the confidence that emerges from a fundamental recognition that transforms your entire perspective. What God has, I have. What God is, I am. Now, this might sound arrogant at you. First, like you're claiming to be divine in some grandiose way, but it's actually the opposite. This is the most humble acknowledgement possible because you're finally recognizing that your good, your breakthrough, your wisdom, your peace, none of it comes from your own efforts or your clever thinking. It flows through you as divine expression. You're not the source, you're the channel. And when you stop trusting yourself to be the source and surrender to being the channel, your entire energetic signature shifts from desperation to peace, from anxiety to trust, from controlling to allowing. Behind the scenes of this internal transformation, tangible changes begin manifesting in your external world in ways that are absolutely measurable. Those decisions that have been paralyzing you for weeks or months suddenly become clear, not because you've analyzed them more thoroughly or gathered more information, but because when your anxious, self-rusting thinking steps aside, divine wisdom flows naturally through your consciousness. You simply know what to do, and the knowing doesn't come with the usual doubts and second-guessing that plague human reasoning. Opportunities that were literally right in front of you, but completely invisible to your cluttered, fearful mind, suddenly appear with perfect clarity. It's not that new doors open, though sometimes they do. More often, you finally perceive the doors that were always there, but your self-focused perspective couldn't recognize. Your awareness expands beyond the narrow tunnel vision that self-rust creates, and you begin seeing possibilities. Your limited thinking had filtered out. Even your relationships undergo transformation without you forcing anything or manipulating anyone. Strained connections begin healing, naturally, because the energy you bring into every interaction has fundamentally changed. You're no longer relating from a place of need and desperation, trying to get something from people or control how they perceive you. You're relating from wholeness and peace, and people respond to that shift even when they can't articulate what's different about you. The impact ripples through every conversation, every conflict, every moment of connection. This is what happens when divine wisdom operates through you instead of your own anxious calculations. Solutions emerge that you never would have thought of. Timing aligns in ways that feel miraculous but are simply the natural flow of divine intelligence, orchestrating circumstances beyond your limited vision. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because understanding these principles is valuable, but seeing how they actually play out in real situations with real people facing crushing challenges reveals dimensions of this truth that theory alone can never capture. Write divine flow in the comments if you're beginning to sense what this shift could mean for the specific challenges you're facing right now. Let me share something with you that might surprise you by its simplicity. The actual practice of shifting from self-trust to God-trust doesn't require elaborate rituals, years of spiritual training, or hours of daily meditation. The transformation can begin with just 10 minutes of your day. That's it. 10 minutes where you stop, approaching God like you're placing an order at a restaurant, rattling off your list of needs and telling Him exactly how to fulfill them based on your own understanding of what should happen. Instead, you sit quietly, release the grip of your own thinking, and you say one simple thing within yourself: I'm now open to receive all that God is giving me. Notice what's happening in that statement. There's no begging, no bargaining, no desperate pleading for specific outcomes that you've decided are necessary. You're not trying to convince God to see things your way or manipulate circumstances to align with your limited perspective. You're simply acknowledging a truth that exists. Whether you recognize it or not, divine supply is already flowing toward you, and you are opening yourself to receive it rather than blocking it with your own agenda. This might seem like a subtle shift, but behind the SCE-ness, it's absolutely revolutionary. You're moving from the exhausting energy of pushing and striving, trying to make things happen through your own effort and understanding, to the natural flow of receiving what's already being given. Think about how the earth receives rain. Does it strain? Does it worry whether the clouds will cooperate? Does it develop complex strategies to force precipitation? No, it simply remains receptive, and when rain falls, it receives. Your lungs don't beg for air or convince oxygen to enter. They breathe naturally, receiving what's already available. Those 10 minutes become sacred space where something profound unfolds. Your anxious human thinking, with all its calculations and fears and desperate problem-solving, steps aside, and in that space, divine intelligence moves through you unobstructed. You're not forcing visualizations of desired outcomes or straining through positive affirmations while secretly doubting they'll work. You're not white-knuckling your way through some mental technique. You're simply being receptive, creating an opening for revelations and intuitive wisdom to emerge naturally, like spring water bubbling up from an underground source that was always there beneath the surface. This is the transformation, from exhausting struggle to effortless grace, from grinding effort to allowing infinite wisdom to think through you. Each day you practice this receptivity. You become more attuned to divine frequency, more sensitive to guidance that's always been broadcasting, more aligned with the flow that is your natural state. When self-trust isn't creating interference, the decisions you need to make become clearer, not because you're thinking harder or analyzing more thoroughly, but because you're thinking less from your limited perspective and receiving more from infinite intelligence. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because what I'm about to share demonstrates exactly how this practice plays out when you're facing real challenges. The kind of situations where trusting God instead of yourself feels almost impossible, yet turns out to be precisely what unlocks the breakthrough you couldn't manufacture through your own understanding. Write "I receive" in the comments if you're ready to explore what this receptive practice looks like in the midst of actual crisis and confusion. Let me tell you about Maria, because her journey illustrates exactly what happens when you make this shift from self-trust to complete surrender. For 3 years, she had been desperately praying for financial breakthrough with an intensity that bordered on violence. Every night, she would literally shake her fists at heaven, begging God to fix her mounting debt and dwindling bank account. She trusted her own assessment that she was in crisis, trusted her own analysis of what needed to happen, and poured all that anxious energy into prayers that demanded specific solutions based on her limited understanding. The more desperately she prayed from that place of self-focused fear, the worse her situation became. It was like watching someone try to catch water with clenched fists. The tighter she gripped, the faster everything slipped away. When Maria discovered this practice of receptivity, Her first reaction was pure terror. If I stop trying to figure this out myself, if I stop telling God exactly what needs to happen, everything will fall apart completely, she thought. But desperation had brought her to a place where she was willing to try something radically different. She committed to 30 days of practicing what we've been talking about, twice daily. She would sit in those 10 minutes of receptivity, surrendering her anxious thoughts about money, releasing her own strategies and plans, simply opening herself to wreck. Eve divine supply without demanding how it should arrive. The first 2 weeks were brutal. Nothing seemed to be happening externally, and internally she felt empty, almost frightened by the silence where her constant mental calculations used to be. But something was shifting beneath the surface that she couldn't yet perceive. Behind the scenes, a profound transformation was taking place in her energy field, in her consciousness, in the way she was, relating to reality itself. By week 3, something remarkable started happening. An unexpected freelance opportunity appeared through an old contact she hadn't heard from in years. A debt she thought was permanent got mysteriously forgiven through a company restructuring. A refund check she'd completely forgotten about arrived in the mail. None of these solutions came from her own thinking or planning. They emerged naturally as she stopped blocking divine flow with her desperate self-rust. Within 6 months, Maria's entire financial reality had transformed, not through her strategizing, but through allowing God to orchestrate solutions her limited consciousness could never have conceived. Then there's David, whose story reveals this same principle, operating in the realm of physical healing. For 5 years, he battled a chronic illness that doctors couldn't fully explain or cure. His prayer life had become an exhausting cycle of begging and bargaining, trusting his own desperate assessment that God needed to be convinced to heal him. The turning point came when he surrendered thoughts about his condition entirely. Instead of fighting his symptoms with anxious mental strategies, instead of trusting his own fearful interpretation of every ache and pain, he sat quietly each day, opening himself to receive perfect health as his divine inheritance. Within a year, medical tests showed improvements so significant that doctors, the term spontaneous remission. David had a different name for it, learning to stop trusting himself and let God be his mind. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because these transformations reveal something crucial about how divine intelligence operates when we stop interfering with our limited human perspective and actually allow infinite wisdom to work through circumstances in ways that defy our rational understanding. Write God orchestrates in the comments if these stories are resonating with challenges you're currently facing in your own life. Jennifer's story takes this principle into territory that might feel even more challenging: relationships. For years, she had been on her knees with the same desperate prayer. Please change my husband, make him understand me, fix our communication, transform him into the partner I need. Every single prayer was focused outward, trusting her own judgment about what was wrong with him and asking God to manipulate someone else to match her expectations. She was absolutely convinced her assessment was correct. He was the problem, and if God would just fix him, everything would be fine. What she didn't realize was that this entire approach was reinforcing the very disconnection she was trying to heal. Her self-rust was creating the problem. Every prayer broadcast the same message. I know what's wrong here. I know what needs to change. I trust my evaluation of this situation. When Jennifer encountered this teaching about receptivity, something inside her resisted immediately. If I stop trying to get God to fix my husband, this marriage will definitely fall apart, she thought. But her current strategy clearly wasn't working. She decided to experiment with something radically different. Instead of trusting her own judgment about what he should be doing differently, instead of trying to control outcomes through prayer, she practiced receiving divine love into her own consciousness. Each morning she would sit quietly, surrendering all her judgments and assessments, opening herself simply to receive God's love without conditions or demands about how her husband needed to change. The transformation started so subtly she almost didn't notice it. She found herself responding to him differently, less reactive when he said things that used to trigger her, more peaceful in situations that previously sparked conflict, genuinely more loving without forcing it or pretending. Behind the scenes, as she stopped trusting her own understanding and let God be her mind instead of operating from her anxious thinking. The entire relationship dynamic began shifting. He started responding differently too, not because she was manipulating him with some spiritual technique, but because the energy she brought into their interactions had fundamentally changed. This is the hidden power of surrender. When you transform your own consciousness, you change the field that everyone around you is responding to. But here's what makes this practice truly revolutionary in your daily experience. You don't have to wait for those 10 minutes of quiet meditation to practice this shift throughout your entire day. In the most mundane moments, you can practice the presence. While you're washing dishes, stuck in traffic, standing in line at the grocery store, waiting for a meeting to start, you can pause for just a second and acknowledge one simple truth: God is here. You're not asking God to show up or begging for divine intervention in your frustration. You're recognizing what's already true. Whether you acknowledge it or not, the divine presence isn't somewhere else waiting for you to summon it with the right prayer formula. It's right here, right now, in this exact moment. These micro moments of acknowledgement become profound resets of your entire consciousness, training your awareness to surrender the controlling thoughts that usually dominate and remain in receptive mode instead. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because understanding how to integrate this awareness into your actual decision-making process, especially when facing challenges that your mind insists require immediate action based on your own assessment, is where this practice moves from concept to lived experience. Write "God is present" in the comments. If you're beginning to sense these moments of divine awareness in your own daily routine, if you've made it this far with me, I want you to know something. You're not here by accident. The fact that you've stayed through this entire exploration tells me you're genuinely ready for this shift in consciousness. You're not just casually browsing spiritual content. You're actively seeking the transformation that comes from surrendering self-rust and letting God be your mind. I create these videos because I truly believe these insights have the power to change lives, not through my words, but through the eternal truths they point toward. If this message resonated with something deep inside you, I'd love for you to join this community of seekers who are learning to move from self-reliance to divine receptivity. Hit that subscribe button so you can continue this journey with us, because each video explores another dimension of what it means to live from divine intelligence rather than limited human thinking. And here's what would mean the world to me. Drop a comment below saying this message was meant for me, so I know you were here, that you received this truth, that something shifted in you as we walk through this together. Your presence in this community matters more than you realize. A simple tap on the like button helps this teaching reach others who are searching for exactly what you just discovered. It's a small gesture that creates ripples far beyond what we can see. There's a video right here that goes even deeper into how divine intelligence operates when you completely release control and stop trusting your own understanding. Click on it, and let's continue this conversation together. I'll meet you there.